Hi, everyone.
Just wait.
Oh.
Take a breath. I'll adjust the camera. We need a few seconds before I'll get recorded. You want a sip of water? You can sip of water a little.
Okay.
And then when you're ready.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lori Herman Campbell. I live in Pennsylvania, about 10 minutes south of the Philadelphia airport, and I'm talking to you today about my experience with Morgellons. So, in April of 2014, I had experienced some health issues, and I knew something was really drastically wrong. I'm not a doctor person. It had probably been years before I'd seen a doctor until my symptoms hit in 2014. And my journey with Morgellons is a bit different than most people that you'll come across. I didn't have lesions. I wasn't finding fibers or articles coming out of my skin. What I did have was internal issues. And the very first symptom I got was a pain that would radiate from between my breast up into my right shoulder. I had difficulty when eating. I was either vomiting up my food, or I would have severe pain within 5-10 minutes of eating. And this went on for a little bit, and during the same time I noticed a total change in my bowel, bladder, and menstrual habits. They completely did a 180 from what was normal for me. I went from somebody that was fairly regular in having bowel movements, usually 2 to 3 times a day, to once a day, to once every couple days, to having to down tons of Miralax to even go once a week. And as I said, I knew something was drastically wrong. I was having urinary incontinence, really debilitating stuff when you're working. I still work for the post office, and at the time I was in a 2-man office. So there was only one of us at the window at a time, and it's really hard to run to the bathroom every time you need to. But I did go to the doctor then, because after all, they are the medical professionals, and they would do tests and find out what was wrong with me. I went to my doctor. They ordered an ultrasound. The only thing the ultrasound showed was an enlarged liver. Because I was having both menstrual problems and GI problems, I got sent to those doctors. And my experience with that was that I got bounced back and forth between the GI doctor and the GYN doctor for about 6 months with no results, until my mother suggested that I leave the Delaware County medical system and look into the bigger hospitals in Philadelphia, either at Penn or Thomas Jefferson. I went with doctors at Penn initially, and I found a gynecologist who was actually probably the most helpful doctor out of all the doctors that I would end up seeing. He ordered both a external and internal ultrasound, and the results of those tests were that I had, in his medical opinion, tons of fibroids and something called a severe adenomyosis of the rear posterior uterus. His remedy for this was to do a DNC. At the time, the uterine lining was also 1.5 inches thick, and they wanted to check for cancer. They did their tests on the tissue, and while it didn't come back as cancer, the cell growth wasn't normal either. And when I went home after that procedure, I had severe bleeding to the point where my husband kind of frantically was calling the doctor back and saying, what do I do with her? And he said, pack her in ice. So I had ice on both sides of my groin to stop the bleeding. And when I went for my follow-up a month later, and he did another exam and another ultrasound, the lining had grown back to the same 1.5 inch thickness. So then we were looking at more surgery because that kind of cell growth was unheard of. And I was large at the time. I'd lost weight afterwards, and now I'm large again. But anyway, he had wanted me to go to Jefferson's GYNs that dealt with oncology because they also had the CyberKnife there. I wasn't able to get into Jefferson. They only had 2 GYN doctors that specialized in oncology. One was booked until April. The other one was on maternity leave until March. My follow-up appointment was in December of 2014, and they wanted me to wait till March or April of 2015. I didn't feel comfortable waiting that long with the way that the cells were growing. So I, again, started doing my own research and found a doctor at Fox Chase who was able to see me within 2 days of calling them. That's where I had my hysterectomy. It was decided between the doctor, myself, and my husband to retain the ovaries, as I was told that removing them would, can I cut for a second? Got a little, all right. So after the hysterectomy, it was the beginning of 5 surgeries in 8 months. After those 8 months is when I discovered that what had been happening to me the whole year before was Morgellons. And I hadn't had any of the sci-fi Morgellon symptoms that most people get until I did a parasite cleanse, apparently out of order. Apparently when you cleanse your body, there's a certain detox order that you're supposed to do them in. Well, I didn't know that at the time, and that's not what I did. I did a parasite cleanse, and I felt an unusual crawling and itching sensation pretty much all over my body. And looking back now, my only thoughts on it are that my detox pathways were so blocked that when I took this cleanse, it did what it was supposed to. It chased the parasites out. But they had nowhere else to go other than out through my skin. And it's kind of funny or ironic, I guess you would say. I had found Morgellons on the internet a whole year before this, just by Googling my internal symptoms. The first thing that appeared was Lyme disease, which I've since tested positive for. And the secondary part of that was that Morgellon sites came up with Morgellons or with Lyme disease rather. And in looking at those sites, I said, I don't have this. I don't have the sores. I don't have the fibers. And what these people are describing is crazy. It wasn't until I did the parasite cleanse and had that same feeling that I realized it was indeed what I had. And, you know, it really is life-altering. You will never unsee this stuff. Sorry, it's a little emotional talking about it. People that have known you your whole life will question your sanity, and that just blows my mind because I was never a conspiracy theorist, never believed in that stuff. Always believed what the medical community told you, that you should be vaccinated, you should vaccinate your children. And I'm sorry, but they're lying to you. All that stuff does is it really just wipes out your immune system and allows Morgellons or Lyme disease to take deep hold. And it is not just a skin disease. It is not just skin deep. This is a systemic illness, and it will affect and devastate, if you allow it to, every aspect of your life. Physical, spiritual, emotional, and mental. I was out of work for those 8 months that I had those 5 surgeries, and quite honestly, I didn't know whether I was going to get back to my job that I was fortunate enough to have. I make $50,000 a year, and towards the end of those 8 months, I was having to use 5 hours of personal time a week just to pay for my health insurance. I thought my husband was going to leave me, that I would end up homeless, because he just couldn't take the change in my personality. Luckily, we were able to work it out, and we're still together, and he's more understanding now than he used to be. I guess if I could give you guys any advice, is to let you know you're not alone. There are a lot of us out here. A lot. Whether the medical community wants to recognize this syndrome, disease, plague, whatever you want to call it, whether they want to recognize it or not, there are a lot of us out here, and you're not alone. Thank you.
Caught. Yeah!
Anytime you're ready, Carl.
My name is Carl. I can honestly say that I was a victim and sufferer of this
Stay still.
condition called Morgellons.
Let's start again.
Okay, all right.
And you're looking right at the floor.
All right, okay, okay.
Yeah, maybe talk to me.
All right, okay,
Yes,
okay,
sounds
cool.
right to Jill.
Can you see Jew, actually?
Hmm?
Because sometimes the lights are blinding. So.
Okay.
It's easier when you talk to somebody than the camera.
It is. And glue your feet down. to the-
I'll do my best.
Okay.
All right.
My name is Carl. I'm going to speak about Morgellons today, not as a victim or sufferer, although I could be a victim or a sufferer just like everybody else, and it's a great price to pay for having this condition. I'm not going to call it a disease because a disease is something we can point to. You know, we can point to a cancer cell, we can say that is cancer. There is no Morgellon cell that you can point to and say this is Morgellons. You can call it a syndrome, meaning it has no specific cause, but it exists none the same. I'm going to call it an affliction because it is absolutely an affliction that the person has to live with when they have this. I can't blame the medical field for all the problems that the patient and the doctor have against each other, because when we look at science, when we look at the medical field, we can see an obvious fact here. The science field is what studies the unknown. The medical field studies the known. Knowing that, if the doctor were to see something that they didn't really know what it was, they would have to just guess, or God forbid they want to go outside the medical books because of today's lawsuit. So I can't completely blame the medical field, but they should have a little bit more of an open-mindedness. With that being said, I would like to look at some of the facts and possibilities here, because the CDC is also to be blamed for this thing, in a way, in their avoidance of this thing. We will hear that the government is trying to cover this up. And it could be coming from chemtrails and all these other things. It could be aliens. It could be all these things. We hear all that. Let's look at a little bit of facts here. Because still to this day, the source is not known where it comes from. The cure is not known to be known. It is said that it's probably not contagious, and I would agree with that from what I've seen so far. So let's look at the cover-up situation here first. When you look at the endocrine system, which is your immune system, there's two primary things that are needed for that to work correctly: copper and iodine. Now, it has also been known that in the chemtrails, I call them chemtrails because they're not accurately, it depends how you look at the situation, but what we can say is that the metal flakes that are in the air, the excuse they're giving us is that it's supposed to reflect sunlight back into the air, back into space, and cool down the earth to help with the gold house, or the greenhouse effect. Sounds like a plausible thing. Now, all these different metals that are in there, they're actually pieces of plastic coated with metal. They're not solid pieces of metal. That way they float into the atmosphere. Bromine is one of these things. Okay, bromine is a little bit heavier than copper, and your body's going to take the next heaviest metal at all times. So it's going to kick the copper out of use, and it's going to put the bromine then in its place, which does not do anything for your endocrine system. And as a matter of fact, the bromine does actually bind to the iodine receptors, so that even the iodine present in the body still cannot be used correctly. That takes us down to an endocrine system that is working on a very, very shabby level. And when we age a couple other stressors in life, like age and stress itself, and we lower it even more, we could start to catch all these different kinds of things we're seeing in the Morgellons condition, like fungals and your different parasitics and bacteria type infections. I mean, anything under the sun could actually happen, which really could make Morgellons cater to depending on how bad your immune system is depending on what could possibly go wrong with you. So it's really, really hard for anybody to really follow where this could possibly be related to or where it's coming from, but there's one thing is for sure: people are suffering from it. I do see this as well as a 4-tier thing. It starts out as a physical thing, and then it goes into a mental thing because you're seeing things that nobody else is really used to, and that becomes a giant mental block in your way of life, and that's going to become very emotional. And of course, in my opinion, it leads right into the spiritual, because there is a demonic presence in this thing that I've caught in microscopy, and I've also caught directly in direct photographs from reflections behind me while shooting microscopy. This, I don't say anything without having a physical proof of what I'm saying. I would never go on camera here today if I couldn't show you physical proof of this. And hopefully we can find a little bit of room to show a couple of those pictures into the documentary here today. They're not doctored up or anything like that. I have the original film, pictures of this stuff, but it's very real. And it also goes beyond still photography. It then becomes situational demonic activity. Now, all this stuff is stuff that is primarily society wants to avoid even talking about because of their disbelief of it, and also because of the lack of facts of it, because of the disbelief and unwillingness to talk about it. But it's very important. We don't have to be a religious person to see demonic activity. We can know that something is definitely not right here. And it's definitely not right in a way that is outside of the physical realm of existence. So if it's not in the physical realm of existence, what is it then? It could be in the mental realm of existence. Well, it's obviously not in the mental realm of existence either, because it can actually be seen, but it's still not in the physical realm. That leaves one more. And that is the spiritual realm. You have to at least explore this before you close your mind off to this. The actions on the body that this takes are also done in a very demonic way. This is not just a catching a cold or catching a flu and average things you see the body going through. This is stuff that is so obscure that it goes beyond the medical inclination of what medical problems are. So that has to be examined. My heart bleeds for these people. I said I was going to cry. But I feel here the most. People suffer, their whole body suffers. What suffers the most is my heart. Seeing everybody suffer. It's unbearable.
Cut. Very end.
Okay, anytime.
My name's Jill Camillo. I got Morgellons 13 years ago when it seemed like nobody had it. It didn't come on slowly. It was like being hit by a truck. I had a weird honeycomb thing on my back. It felt like a honeycomb and it wouldn't heal. And then a month later, I had a big bump on my arm and black oil was coming out of it. I kept playing with it because it was something that shouldn't be in my body, I've never seen. And about 2 hours later, I felt like I was tripping on acid. I felt like I thought somebody had drugged me. It got worse and worse. I told my daughter's father I couldn't pick her up. I knew there was something wrong. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw my face growing right in front of, just almost visibly. There's a sore that just appeared. And meanwhile, my brain is shutting down or becoming delusional or just I'm losing all sense of reality and looking in the mirror as it grows, and one spot would become 3. I'm grabbing peroxide and anything I can to stop it, and it keeps multiplying until I look like somebody who had been stung by bees, like allergic. I had no neck. It was grotesque. I was also fully psychotic. I called an ambulance, but I didn't even know that I was supposed to wear clothes at that point. My brain was just, now I know, inflamed. But they didn't know what was going on at the hospital. People in hazmat type suits came in. They put caution tape around it. They put me on intravenous antibiotics, and I could feel it slow down a little bit, the attack. I did think I was being attacked by demons because my brain, there was no other way to describe it, just attacked by demons. And then after 2 days of IV antibiotics and the hazmat suits, they sent a psychiatrist in and said, they just sent me home and said, would you like to stay, in the ward? Because I had a history of depression, but I never had a history of psychosis. So I said, no, thank you for your hospitality. I'll go home. But it got worse, so I went to 2 other hospitals. The same thing happened, hazmat suits and caution tape. And then a day later, sending me home with a referral to a psychiatrist. So there was no help. All I can say is the next 10 years was really hell. I couldn't leave the house because I constantly had sores open that would never ever heal. There was constantly sharp things coming out of my skin. There was never a day, first of all, what had inflamed my skin to this puffiness, like that was still so huge and didn't go away. I didn't know what it was, and the doctors not only didn't know what it was, they did not care, and they wouldn't look into it. They wouldn't test me for it. So I spent probably cumulatively 5 years of my life in front of the mirror manually getting this stuff out of me and saving it, because at first I thought that I could get to the bottom of this and bring it to a lab, have it tested, which they did at one point. But they sent it to a lab just to prove that I was delusional. But it came back as crystallized keratin. But that didn't matter because nobody cared still about what was in my skin or what was happening. So I learned how to just hide and, try to survive alone. And I didn't like the gasps of horror I would get. Now I'm going to cry. I didn't like the gasps of horror I would get when I walk into just a store, usually to get Band-Aids. Because, people see you. And they can't help that first reaction where you look not only sick and horrible, but dirty and contagious is how you feel. And then on top of that, there being no help, the doctors being less than helpful because they will lock you up. And now I know that almost everybody who goes for help with Morgellons gets labeled with delusional parasitosis. It's a label I had to accept because I couldn't work. I couldn't leave the house and I needed the money from disability. So I'm basically, labeled for life, no credibility. So 4 months ago I went online, I found a community.
Take your heels. Cover the microphone.
Oh, okay. When did it start doing that?
Just,
Okay.
it wasn't
Okay.
until now.
So 4 months ago, I was having such bad neurological symptoms. The face and the neck had slowly diminished its, bigness, just very slowly.
4 months or 4 years?
4 months.
Okay, because first time you were saying.
I was
4
wrong
years.
the 4 times.
Okay.
Okay. So
just wanna be sure.
that's right. 4 months ago, the neurological symptoms had progressed to a point where I was buzzing and vibrating. That's the only way I can describe it. And I knew that doctors would be no help, as they had never been any help. I went online and all of a sudden, I wasn't alone. All of a sudden, everybody had Morgellons and there were pages all over the place. And I was really kind of excited at first because I wasn't the only one. I'd totally given up on even looking into it. And then I found all these people trying to help each other, all these people who had different ideas, and they would try different therapies. Some would work, some would, a million different sides of this is how it came to be, this is how you get it, this is what it is. Nobody can agree, but at least we're trying. And some of the medications and the remedies and the therapies that I've gotten only from these people have changed my life. I feel like I'm kicking this disease's ass. I don't know, disease, syndrome, whatever. I was invaded by parasites, so it's not delusional. They were really a type of parasite, and I have had to turn to veterinary medicine, as in goat dewormers, etc., to get the medicine I need. And that's how I'm getting better. And a lot of my friends are getting better that way too. And, everyone's got their own way, their own specific kind of protocol or treatment, but I'm just kind of using all of them. And I don't really care what protocol it is if it helps me. And, I have my health coming back now and a life now where I can make an appointment, make a schedule, and say I'll be there, and I'll actually be there. I won't have to skip it because I have a great big lesion on my face. So I feel hopeful. Cut.
When you're ready.
Okay. "13 years ago, I became really sick, and I had no idea what was going on. All of a sudden, I was very tired. Things started breaking out of my face. like seeds were popping out of my eyebrows. They were popping out of my face at an alarming rate. My whole face was covered in blood. Just, I went to emergency rooms, I went to my doctor. They wouldn't look at me, they wouldn't examine me. I went to probably about 30 different doctors, and no one would help me. Soon after that, I was in the living room with my husband, and I felt something come on me. And you know how it feels like when you're getting a cold and you feel it coming on the night before, like, oh no, I'm getting sick. Well, it was that exact feeling, except it was 50 times stronger. And it came on me so hard that I thought I was going to die right then and there. My husband was there with me, and I kept saying, I'm dying, I can feel it coming on me. And I felt it come into me and go all through my body. And I just sat down on the couch and I asked them to pray. And then a few days later, so many things happened. I had all these things coming out of my face. Something was wrong with me. I couldn't stay awake. And then I started doing things that were so out of my normal behavior. I slept about 20 hours a day, and for 2 to 3 hours at night, around 2 a.m., I would go out, and I felt like I had to take things. And I felt it was my job, and I had to do it. I'd never have done anything like that before in my life. I've never been in trouble with the law. I've never been arrested, never even thought that would ever happen to me. But I broke into model homes, and I would take small things, or houses they were building. I would take the leftover tile. I didn't want to hurt people, but I knew I had to do it. I don't know why I felt I had to do it. I didn't understand it. I thought I was going crazy. And it was like that for 2 years. And then I was finally set up by a girl and her boyfriend, and I was arrested. And okay, cut for a second. After I was arrested, I knew they were setting me up. I knew it. I even told them I knew it. But I wanted help. And I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't know why I had this compulsion. So I went through with it. And I was arrested. And when the police were talking to me, I just prayed and asked God to help me, and that I knew I wasn't a criminal, but my behavior showed I was. So I admitted to everything. I gave everything back that I took, and I was arrested, and they sentenced me to jail for a month. Normally, people would have got 15 years. In fact, my lawyer said, someone up there likes you because I don't know how you got a month in jail. He said that I was delusional if I thought that's all that I was going to get. And I told him that's all I can have, because I couldn't let my parents, my family know that I did something like that. I spent a month in jail, Okay, stop again. As I searched for what was wrong with me, the only way I could put the black specks in, I could put seeds, I could put all the symptom is in the computer. Nothing ever brought anything up. So I looked at pictures one day. It took me 3 months of searching on the internet. And I was looking at pictures and I found someone's skin and it said Morgellons. And I looked first time after searching for this for 3 months of my symptoms. I could not find anything on it. And then when I saw the pictures, and then I went and I read what the symptoms were, and they were the black specks, everything that I had was there on paper, and it took me 3 months to find that out. And then came the horror of everything else that went along with it, the skin crawling, something possessed me. I felt it that night coming on me. I didn't realize until later that it was demonic. And I was doing those things because of demonic influence. I went to a Reiki master, paid $800 to get this removed, because they said they saw there was something on me. They did things to me for 3 hours, but nothing changed. I didn't feel anything. And when I came to the conference here 2 years ago, and I met Candy, and she knew right away I had a demonic presence on me. And she took me into the room, and my whole body started shaking, and I didn't even know what she was going to do. And it wasn't me shaking, it was something internally was shaking. And I got scared because I didn't understand. And then she cast it out in the name of Jesus, and I felt it leave my body. It totally stopped. So since then, I've known this is demonic. The things I was doing, they were demonic. And I prayed for forgiveness. And I know I've been forgiven. And now I'm just trying to help people because it's changes your life in so many ways. You aren't who you were, and you want to be that person again. But the things happening to you physically are so bizarre that no one can understand them. Even my husband wouldn't believe me. It took him 5 years to even think that what I was saying might be true. And he was my husband. He loved me. What else do I want to talk about?
That's good. That was fantastic.